Hi, AP Psych students. I'm going to go over the schools or the approaches or the perspectives, you can call it any one of those, of modern psychology. So we looked at structuralism and functionalism as the historical schools. These are the modern ones, okay? So the first one we're going to look at is behavioral. Behavioral perspective or behavioral approach is all about learning. Basically, the behavioralists believe that everything you do is learned behavior. And so all your behavior comes because you've learned it. Somewhere along the line, your behavior was reinforced and either through punishments or rewards. And so you continue the behavior. They are all about learning things in your environment. They are all nurture, no nature. Okay, and the people that go with behavioral are Pavlov. He was one of the first. Watson, especially Watson and Skinner. Watson did an experiment with a little baby, 11-month-old called Little Albert, and he trained Little Albert to be afraid of white furry things. He found that the baby was not afraid of like bunnies and white rats, things like that. He then made the baby afraid. He would put the bunny down with the baby and then bang on a pipe with a hammer to make this loud, scary noise, so that the baby began to associate the white furry thing with that scary noise. So when he would see the rat, the bunny, he'd start screaming. And so there's a little video of little Albert in the slides that you can go take a look at. So Watson. Pavlov is the classical conditioning guy. He rang a bell and the dog drooled. You probably have heard that before. And then most importantly is Skinner. He is the big believer in reinforcement. So if you reinforce the behavior, it's more likely to occur. And he used positive reinforcements and negative reinforcements. So, if you get an A on your first psych test and your parents give you $100, then you're going to try and get A's on all your psych tests. So that's you learn to behave because you're rewarded, or you could be punished. So for behavioral, if you see environment, learning, punishment, reinforcement, reward, any of those words, that's going to be a key that it's a behavioral approach. Also, if you see somebody observing somebody else and repeating the behavior, that's a learned behavior. You learned through social interaction. You learn, it's called social learning. You learned it by watching someone else. All those kinds of things are going to be the behavior school or approach. Psychoanalytic, that's the very first one. That's Freud. This is Freud, very famous because he looked at the unconscious mind. He believed that our behavior comes from unconscious thoughts, things that we've suppressed or repressed into our unconscious that we're afraid to deal with. And so when we have, unusual behavior, it results from something that we don't want to deal with. And so Freud's big push was to get at that. So he would use psychoanalysis, which is where he just lets you talk and figure out what you think of and then try and make connections. It's called free association, sorry. He also used dream analysis. So he would talk to you about your dreams and figure out what you were dreaming about and try and tie that to what the problem is. And so if you see anything about unconscious thoughts, dreams, it's unconscious. You're going to see a lot of unconscious. If you're repressing something, if you use defense mechanisms because you don't want to deal with it, all those are going to be in the psychoanalytic approach. This is not really used today. It's called psychodynamic. Freud, as you'll find later, has a lot of sexual issues tied into psychoanalytic, and they dumped all the sexual things. We'll learn a bunch about those to create psychodynamic. So for our purposes early, we'll learn psychoanalytic and psychodynamic are kind of the same. They're the same philosophy that there's things going on in your unconscious. But for Freud, it was mostly sexual things. Okay, the next one is humanistic. Humanistic, Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow are the humanistic guys, and their belief is that your behavior is caused by your failure to reach your full self, your full achievement. They believe that, unlike psychoanalytic and behavior, where something had happened to you in your past and psychoanalytic, or you've learned it through behavioral. Humanistic believe you have free will, and you can, you're an adult now and you can choose whatever you want. You're going to direct your future. This is all about personal growth. I always say if it sounds like a big hug, it's humanistic. It's about reaching your true potential, your true self, growth. Any of those words are going to be it. They believe that we're all striving for self-actualization. That's like becoming our complete self. So if you see anything self, any of that, that's going to be humanistic. This is if it sounds like coaching, like, help coaching someone to reach their full potential, that's going to be humanistic. It's all about reaching your full potential. It's very positive. It's kind of the basis of what we call positive psychology. Psychology now. If it sounds like Mr. Rogers was a humanist, and so he sounds very much like Maslow and Rogers too. So, the Mr. Rogers that you would see on TV, as opposed to Carl Rogers. So they believed that, it's all about achieving that true self. Okay, next one's cognitive. Anytime we see cognitive, I want you to think thinking. Cognitive psychology is about your thinking. It could be your memory, it could be your thought processes, your perceptions, those kind of things. So any mental processes that we might use, thinking, memories, perceptions, any of that, that's cognitive psychology. So anytime you see cognitive thinking and memory, okay? And so cognitive psychologists are going to focus on your thought processes, and they're going to try and change your thought processes. So some of our bad behaviors or, disturbing behaviors are because of our ways of thinking. This is especially useful in treating depression because they want to help us change our thinking, our bad reasoning and those kind of things. And so we can then develop better ways of thinking and improve it. Cognitive psychologist, probably the only one you have to know by name is, at this point anyway, is Jean Piaget. He was all about learning and how we develop our learning from the time we're an infant till we're grown. Okay, so cognitive is all about thinking, memory, those kind of things. Then the biological approach, this is just the medical approach. Biological approach believes that our behavior is caused by things going on in our bodies, chemical imbalance in our brain. Maybe we have a tumor or some kind of growth, our genetics, brain chemistry, we're talking about neurotransmitters, hormones, those kind of things. So this is the medical approach, and sometimes they call it biomedical approach, but they're going to look at any kind of disease like Parkinson's, Huntington's, Alzheimer's. They also help with autism, substance abuse disorders. So if you see those kind of things, if you see it's some kind of medical treatment or the behavior is caused by some kind of disruption in the brain, whether it's neurotransmitters, hormones, maybe a tumor or something like that, then that's going to be a biological approach. Their approach is we're going to treat it medically. We'll have a surgery and remove the tumor. We'll provide you with drugs that'll help balance the brain chemistry, drugs or medication. So it is, it's due to your biology and we're going to fix it medically. That's going to be the biological approach. And then sociocultural, this is when they study how your behavior is caused as a product of your culture and your social interactions. Okay, so how is our behavior formed by social groups, by our culture? So it's going to be looking at our gender issues. It's going to look at socioeconomic. So are we rich? Are we poor? Are we middle class? How does that influence our behavior? It's going to look at race and ethnicity and those kind of things, our social status, social roles. How do those things impact our behavior? Famous people that we'll know later are Philip Zimbardo and Stanley Milgram. So these are the social psych people. And so we'll learn about them. If you've seen the Stanford Prison Experiment on Netflix, that's Zimbardo. He's still around, so we can see him actually talking recently. All right, so how does society and our culture affect our behavior? That's sociocultural. So if you see anything, gender, age, socioeconomic status, anything like that, that's going to be sociocultural. So those are kind of keywords to alert you to sociocultural. All right, the next one. Oops, sorry. Oh, that is the last one on the slide. There is also evolutionary psychology. That's going to be Darwin and James. There's no slide for that. So if you see anything that sounds like survival of the fittest, if it sounds like, we have developed this as an adaptation. Adaptation's a big one, kind of like functionalism. Uh, so any kind of evolving, anything like that, that is going to be the evolutionary approach.